we can't, worst case scenario is the robbery suspect and the person who wants to take off with the evidence that they caught of it. That's on one side. Worst case on the other side is an abusive officer who just wants to take a cell phone for no good reason. And we're not going to be able to hedge against both of those. We just got to count on the reasonableness in the middle. That said, I got to agree with what Majeska said, that maybe having serious crime throughout 415.5 can help ameliorate it. What serious is just depends on the reasonableness of everybody involved, and we'll review it later.
I heard that a couple of times last weekend, or excuse me, last month, and then again this month. I think the intent is remember that the policy is the guide for the officers, and really that term serious is in here to remind officers and sergeants who are reading this that we don't want to seize the we don't need to necessarily seize the camera of the person who just shoves it in my face and gets in my way and continues their interference and ends up going to jail. That, you know, that term is not in there to confuse people about its ambiguity or make people wonder, well, what do you mean by serious? Because one man's serious is another man's no big deal, right? So if there are suggestions on how we can capture the intent of, we just want to give caution, not caution, but guidance to officers and sergeants who are reading this to know that it's not necessary that we seize every phone that happens to be recording an event that is arrestable or criminal. You know, that's really the perspective we're coming from. So if the commission can offer us some language that would help convey that same meaning, but maybe take away some of the, I hear people's concerns about it, and I think it has to do with the ambiguity of what I think is serious, someone else might not, and we'll use that to, you know, in the end say, well, we've defined it as serious, and though you haven't, so we're good. So we can always come out as a victor in that, but that's not the intent. So if there's language that we can throw in there that does that, we'll incorporate that.
One more thing, if I can, as far as the different levels of restraint on liberty, and I see seizing a cell phone as less than detaining a person. And I'm not sure the Constitution is going to allow detention of a person who didn't commit a crime but did collect evidence of a crime.
Good point. Thank you, George.
Joe, I hear your concern, and it's a good concern. The chances of that happening, I think, are very slim. I also think if it does happen by a dirty officer, I think that we've got the Citizens Review Board to review that. We have a backstop for it. But saying that I'm going to use this extreme, 2% of officers are bad, so you restrict 98% of them to have a supervisor come in there. I'm sorry, I just look at the odds. The odds of it happening are very slim. It's a waste of man hours. And the consequences of taking a phone versus an officer trying to multitask by keeping a suspect, or not keeping the suspect, keeping the person who has the phone, splitting his things out, excuse me, creates, I get confused, chewing gum and walking sometimes. Imagine an officer having to keep an eye on a cell phone when he could just grab it. That's put to bed. He doesn't have to concentrate on that anymore. I'm saying you have some, you know, I mean, good, but if the worst case scenario is somebody gets their cell phone unconstitutionally or badly confiscated, that's, in the real world, that's itty bitty. The worst case scenario, the officer is trying to multitask and doesn't know the suspect pulls a gun and shoots him.